Hello friends, welcome to Java class, and in this class today we will discuss about types of Java variables. In the previous class we discussed about how to declare the variables and how to assign the variables to values to a variables, and we learned about there are two types of assigning the values to a variables. In the first method is using the assignment operator. We can assign the values to the variables, or by using the reading statement like by using a data input stream class or input stream class or scanner class or console class methods can be used to read the values of a variable. So before discussing reading a value by different the other classes, let us discuss the types of Java variables. So in Java variables, we are classifying the variables into three types. Those are types of variables in Java. There are three types of Java variables are there. Those are local variables, instance variables, class variables. And these class variables are also called as what? These are called as a static variables. See, these are the three types of variables which are available in a Java variables. So let us discuss about these variables. So first one is a local variables. So we already learnt there are two in C programming language where in that case we are classifying the variables into two types. First one is a global variables and second one is a local variables. So we are classifying these types of variables on the basis of the scope of available. So scope means the area where we can access the variables, that is called as a scope. Okay. So what do you mean by global variables and what do you mean by local variables? So comment your answer. Means global variable means the variables which are declared before the main function is called as a global variables. That means you can access anywhere in the program. That's why these variables are called as a global variables. And next one is the local variables. The variables which are declared within the main method, these are called as a local variables. Means these variables cannot be accessed outside the main method. You see, that's why these are called as a local variables. But let us see the difference between the local variables, instance variables, class and static variables in a Java programming language. So first one is the local variables in Java programming language. So in this case, the variables which are declared inside the method body are functions. The variables which are declared inside the method body, those are called as a local variables. Function ಒಳಗ function ಅದ definition ಒಳಗ ಏನು variables ನ declare ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀವೋ ಅವನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ local variables ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. Why these are called as a local variables? Because the variables which are the access of variables is not possible outside the method. That's why these are called as a local variables. Only within that method only we can access the variables, we can use those variables. That's why these are called as a local variables. And one more thing we have to remember here, when you declare the variables, we must assign the values to those variables within the body only, within the method body. If you don't do this, it will arise a compile time error. So we have to remember this concept while we are declaring the variables or while we are using the local variables in our Java programming language. Okay, see this. So this is a definition of local variables. So that variables may be declared within the method or within the constructors or within the block. That method is the method body is also called as what? That method body is also called as a block here. So the variables which are declared within these blocks, these are also called as variables, and these variables cannot be accessed or available from outside the body or outside the blocks. That's why these are called as local variables. So this is the point which we must remember while we are using local variables. And see, when we are declaring the local variables, we must not specify the access modifiers to the variables like private, public and protected. These access modifiers must not be used with the local variables. And these local variables are visible only within the declared constructors or a method or a block. This is the point which we must remember. That means the accessibility is only available within the block. And next one is local variables is not equivalent to the instance or a class variables. So these are not equal to the class variables or a instance class variables instance or and a instance variable. And these local variables must not be declared as a static. ಏನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಲೋಕಲ್ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ಸ್ನ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಸ್ಟಾಟಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಇಫ್ ಯು ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ ಅ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ ವಿತ್ ಅ ಸ್ಟಾಟಿಕ್ ಕೀವರ್ಡ್ಸ್, those are called as a static keywords, but when you are using a local variables, those must not be a static keywords. So these are the points which we must be remember while we are using a local variables. Okay, so let us see one example for local variables. See, this is an example for local variable. In this case, see here I am declaring a one class test. This is a class name and this is a keyword, and here we specifying a class as a public, means any class can access the properties of this class within the program. Okay, and in the class body, here I am defining a one method, and here method name or function name is m1. Okay, in this method definition I am declaring a one variable x, and x is called as a local variable. This is a local variable. And what we have to do at the declaration time, only we have to assign a value to a local variable. So this is called as a local variable, and this is only one class in our program. That's why we have to create a main method in this class only. So here I am creating a main method, public static void main, and if you want to access the local variables within the main method, we have to create the object for this class. If you declare this variable within the main method, in this case there is no need to create the object, but before the main or outside the main method I am declaring a variable. That's why if you want to access the local variables of the class, in that case you have to create an object for the class, object for that class. Okay, so here I am creating the t as an object for the class test, and this can already you know about syntax of creating the object. First we have to use a class name, after that object name, assignment operator, new operator, and default constructor. Okay, this is the syntax of creating the object for the class. And once the object is created, by using this object of the class, we can access the method. So ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಅನ್ನು access ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬಹುದು by using the object. So t1.m1, so it will access the method of this class. This is a way of accessing the local variables of a class, or using a local variables inside the class. Okay, or also you can also write here one statement or printing statement, system dot out dot println, print the value of x. Okay, so it will print the value of x. So this is a simple example for using the local variables. Okay, got the point? If you have any doubts, comment your doubts or ask okay. So let us discuss the next type, that is instance variables. So instance variables which are declared inside the class but outside the body of the method. So instance variables means these are declared inside the class but outside the body of a method or a constructor or a blocks is called as what? These are called as a instance variables, and they are available for the entire class. So once we declared the instance variables inside the class, they can be used within the method, or they can be used within the constructors, or they can use in any other blocks. That's why these are called as the instance variables. But when we declare the local variables, these the availability of those variables is only restricted to particular method or a particular constructor or particular block. But instance variables can be accessed anywhere within that class. So this is the difference between the local variables and instance variables. See, this is the definition of local instance variables. And these instance variables are a non-static variables, because these variables are not declared with a static variables. That's why these are called as a non-static variables. If a variables are declared with a static keyword, in that case those variables are called as what? Those variables are called as a static variables. Okay, and instance variables are created and the objects are created. So just these are called when we declare the variables, the memory is not allocated for the instance variables, but when we create a object for that class, at that time only memory is allocated for the objects. So this is the again the difference between the local variables and the instance variables. And already we know the syntax of creating the objects. When we use a new operator to allocate the or instantiate the object, at that time only the memory is allocated for the instance variables also. And when we destroy the object, so objects in a class the objects in a destroy ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ the amount of memory is allocated for the instance variables is also destroyed. That means when we create the object, the instance variables is also created. When we destroy the object, in that case also the instance variables are destroyed. And we can also use the access specifiers for the instance variables. Access specifier means public, private and protected. So these access specifiers can also be used with the instance variables. See the points. So these are the points. Okay. If you don't specify the access specifier to the instance variables, by default these are treated as a public. So ನಾವು ಯಾವುದೇ access specifier ನ use ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, so those are called as a public access specifiers. And as we know, when we declare the local variables, those variables must be declared. But in the instance variables, there is no need to initialize the value. Just we can declare. But as and when we require, at that time only we can initialize the values or assign the values. Okay. So this is the point. So let us write a one program where we can declare the instance variables and how to and let us see how to access the instance variables from static and non-static area. Okay. So let us see the example. See. So this is the example for creating the instance variables and accessing the instance variables. See, in this program I used both the instance variables. See, in this program, I am declaring the instance variables. So, we know instance variables means the variables which are declared within the class body are called as a instance variable. See, this is a class test. Again, here I am using a class name as a test and making this class as a public. Okay. So, in the class body only, I am declaring the variables a and b of integer data type. And here I am initializing the value of a is equal to 30 and b is equal to 40. So, if you don't initialize these variables, this is also valid. But here I am initializing the value of a and b is equal to 30 and 40 respectively. Okay. So, once the declaration and initialization is done, so in the next case I am defining the method. Okay. And see here, these variables are called as what? These variables are called as the instance variables. If I declared these variables within the method m1, these are called as what? These are called as a local variables. The variables which are declared within the method body, those are called as a local variables. Okay. And see, in the main method, I am creating an object for the class test because I want to access the variables within the main method. So, for that purpose, I am creating an object for the class test and here I am printing the values of instance variable a and b. So, I want to access these variables. So, accessing the instance variables using a object reference. So, here object reference is t. So, these variables or these instance variables can be accessed by using a object reference or a object t. So, t1.a within the println method, if you want to access the instance variables, we have to use the object, period operator and a variable name or a instance variable name. So, the same for the variable b. Okay. So, let us see if declare one more method, that is a main method. So, in this method there is no need to use the object because this method is belonging to a class test. So, in that case there is no need to use a object of that class. So, directly you can print the value of a and b using a println method. So, this area is called as a instance area, but in this area is called as a static area because this method is a static. That's why here we need to use a object but in the method, that is in method M1, we don't need to use any object of the class test. Directly we can use variables, like here we used variable or instance variable A and instance variable B. So got the point why we need to use the object here and why we need not to use a object of the class test here. So we can directly access the variables of the class. So this scope of the or these variables, availability of variables is or these variables are available anywhere within the class, like any in a method. If I declare a one more method like M2, in that case only I can directly access the variables A and B. Okay. So clear the point and clear the point about differences between the local variables and instance variable. And so these variables are called as object variables. ಈ variables ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ these are called as object variables. These are called as object variables because these are created when the objects are created and these are destroyed when the object is destroyed. That's why these are called as object variables. So these are called as object variable. Instance is nothing but what? Instance is nothing but a object. So that's why object variable is also called as what? This is also called as a instance variables. Okay. So for instance, that means object. So of a class has its own copy for each variables. See here, for this class we can create some more than one object. Already we know that. So when we create a one object, every object has its own copy of the variables. So like if I create a T1, okay. So in the next case, here I am declaring creating a one more object like a T2, okay. So in this case, T2 is having its own copy of this variable and T1 is also having its own copy of these variables, and any changes made to these variables does not affect to another copy of the variables which are belonging to the other variables. So that's why these are called as object variables. So let us see the example for this point. Okay. So this is the description about how the memory allocation of instance variables takes place in a Java programming language. So I will explain how the value of an object does not affect to the value of an other instance variable. Instance variable is nothing but what? This is a object. Okay. Don't confuse it. Instance means that is a object. See this program example. Okay. See, here I am creating a one class marks. Okay. Here class name is marks and int marks type. Here int marks physics marks. So this is the instance variable. Here I am declaring, here I am initializing the value of physics marks is equal to 80. And in the main method, I am creating the objects of a class marks. So M1 is the object and M2 is the object. And when we create an object by using a new operator, the memory is allocated or this instance variables are also created. So one copy is created for M1 and another copy is created for M2. And see. So int physics marks 1 is equal to M1 dot physics marks. So these are the another two variables which are local to the main method. These are local variables to the main method. Here I am assigning the values of physics marks to the variable p marks 1. Okay. The value stored in a physics marks is 80. Now it is stored in a variable p marks 1. Okay. And by using a M2, again here we are using a here I am storing the value of physics marks. So this is also has its M1 is also has its own copy and M2 is also has its own copy. The value is stored now by using M1 I am storing the value into a p marks 1 and by using a M2 I am storing the values into the p marks 2. So let us print the value stored in these variables, that is p marks 1 and p marks 2. So don't confuse the variables. This is called as an instance variable. These are called as a local variables. Okay. By using the println method, here I am printing the values of p marks 1 and p marks 2. Okay. And it will print check what will be the output of these two statements. Okay. And see, here I am making changes to the instance variable physics marks by using a M2 object. M2 object na use ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂನ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. 80 ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ರೀ, 90 ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ. So now the value which is stored in a physics variable of a copy object M2 is 90, but it will not affect to the copy of a variable but it will not affect to a variable which is belonging to the object M1. So in M1 it will be the value of physics max is 80, but the variable which is the copy which is belonging to the object physics max is 90. So let us print this value. So now we will get the difference. Okay, in the first printing statement, here I am printing the value of M2. So here I am writing just one printing statement as after changing the value of instance variable. Okay. So here I changed the value. Now what will be the new value of physics max? New value of physics max is 90. So marks in physics M1 plus M1. Here we are using a M1 variable. So it will print the value as 80, but here we change the value for the M2 object. Now the value of this max is 90. So M2 value is 90. So let us execute this program. So we'll get what is the difference. Okay. So I am storing this program within a bin folder. Marks. So file name and class name, main method class name must be same, and save this program in the bin folder. So once you saved the program, next open the command prompt. So after that change the directory cd backslash cd java cd jdk cd cd bin. So now compile the program. Marks, sorry, I missed the extension of file. So now our program is successfully compiled. Once the program is successfully compiled, next step is execute the program by using the interpreter. Okay. See, this is our program output. In the first case, physics 1 and physics 2. See here. So in the first printing statement, here we are printing the values of P marks. M1 and M2 has its own copy of the variable P physics marks. So both are having the same value. But here I am changing the variable value which is belonging to a object M2. So in this printing statement will print a statement which is inserted within the double quotation as it is. In the next statement, here I am printing the value of physics marks. We don't change the value of physics marks of object M1. So that's why physics marks is 80. But in a second statement, here I change the value of physics marks which is belonging to a object M2. That's why it will change the value from 80 to 90. But it will not affect to a copy which is belonging to the M1. So this is the difference between the variable, local variable and instance variables. Okay, clear the point? So write one more example using an instance variable and check how it will not affect the changing a value of a value of a variable which is belonging to a one instance variable and another instance variable. So when we make any program or when we execute any program, so it has its memory. So yava one program and baritivo avag enaguttri. So it has its own memory, and that memory is called as what? That memory is called as a runtime data, and which is allocated, this memory is allocated by a JVM, that is Java Virtual Machine. The expand form of JVM is Java Virtual Machine, and this Java uses two types of memory, or this memory is divided into two parts. First one is called as a stack memory, and second part is called as a heap memory for storing the data type. So ಈ ಡೇಟಾ ಟೈಪ್ ಏನು ಬಿಲಾಂಗ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಆ ಡೇಟಾ ಟೈಪ್ನ ಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಮೆಮರಿನ ಟೂ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. First one is a stack memory and second one is a heap memory. Okay, so when we create an object using a new keyword, so the related objects, variables and properties are stored in the in this memory. So allocated memory ಒಳಗೆ ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದ್ರ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಇರುವಂತ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟೀಸ್ ಅದ್ರ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಇರುವಂತ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟೀಸ್ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾವ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಮೆಮರಿ ಒಳಗೆ ಅಲೋಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಮೆಮರಿ ಒಳಗೆ JVM ಅಲೋಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರುವಂತ ಮೆಮರಿ ಒಳಗೆ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾವ್ರಿ ಸ್ಟೋರ್. So this is about the instance variables and how the memory is allocated for the instance variable. So this is a stored memory of instance variables. How the memory is allocated for instance variables. So let us discuss next one, that is static variables. So as I already told, the variables which are declared with the static keywords are called as static variables. And these static variables are also called as what? These are called as a class variables. Another name of static variables is class variables. There may be a question for your examination like define static variables or define static variables. Both are same. The variables which are declared with a static keyword, it is called as a static variables or a class variables. So these variables or static variables are also called as what? Class variables, because these are associated with a class. That's why these are called as a static variables. And these static variables are also always declared within the class. ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಒಳಗೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಈ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ಸ್ನ ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ಡ್ ವಿತ್ any other constructors or any other methods or any other blocks. So that's why these are called as a class variables. So let us see the example for static variables. So see this is an example definition of a static variable. See, this is declared inside the class but outside of any methods, constructors or a blocks. These static variables must be declared outside the methods or constructors or a blocks. Okay. So let us see one example for a static variable. This is a example for static variable. See, here I am creating a class test. Okay, in the class body I am declaring the variable a and b, but including the data type we are declaring the variable with a keyword static. That's why these are called as a static variables, declaration of static variables. And we can also initialize the value of static variable here only. And once we declare the method, here I am using a main method. In the main method is this main method is also a static. So if you want to access this variable, what we need? We need a object. So in system.println, and see here, if you want to access the static variables of a class within the static method, in Rf, this static method is the block of a static method is called as what? This is called as a static area. So in this case, if you want to access the static variables, directly you can use the class name. We don't need to use any object. That's why these are called as what? These are called as a static variables or a class variables. These are associated with a class. That's why directly you can use a class name, period operator and variables name. So directly it will print the value stored in a variable A. So these are called, this is how to access the static variables of the class within the static area. And here we are printing the value of A and here we are printing the value of B. And in the next statement, here I am creating the object for the class test and t1.m. See here, always the program execution starts from here, where always our program execution starts from a main method. So this is also, well, if I change the position of the method is also valid if you get confused. Okay, here I changed the, here I am changing the position of a user defined method. See, as we know, our program execution starts from where? Our program execution always starts from main method. Okay, so main method ಒಳಗೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? This when this statement execute, it will test, the control will move to the class. In the class it will find the declaration of a static variables, and next it will be accessed the value stored in a variable A. Now it will print the value of A, and after that in a similar way it will also print the value of B. Okay, so here I am creating the object of the class as T. By using this object I am accessing a method m1. So again now the control will pass to the method m1, and now in the method m1 it will next the control will be moved to the next line, that is it will find the beginning of the method m1. After that, it will find the next statement system.out.println. See, this method is belonging to a class test. These are called as a instance method. Okay. In this case also, we can directly use a class name to access the static variables. In the instance method, if you want to access the static variables, we can use the test or a class name. Okay. So test.a, it will access the value stored in a variable a, and test.b, it will access the value stored in a b. So this statement prints the value of a, and this printing statement prints the value of b. So this is how to access the value, how to access the static variables of a class. See the memory location, how the memory location is allocated for the static variables. And in this case, the memory is for the static variables, the memory is allocated only once. When the class is loaded, so memory and when the class is loaded, the memory is created. When the class is destroyed, the memory is allocated for this variables is again destroyed. That's why these are called as a class variables. Class ಗೆ memory allocate ಆದಾಗ ಈ variables ಗೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ memory allocate ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. When we destroy the class, the allocated memory is destroyed, and the memory is allocated in the heap area. So heap area ಏನಿರುತ್ತೋ ಆ memory ಒಳಗೆ ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ static variables store ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. The static variables are stored in a heap memory. So this memory is called as a permanent generation memory. ಆ memory ಒಳಗೆ ಅದೇ again ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ heap memory ಒಳಗೆ again ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ divide ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. So where the static variables are stored in a heap memory, that area is called as a permanent generation memory. Just you must remember the point. So this is about the different types of Java variables. So it will be asked for 10 marks. Define variables and explain the types of Java variables with a suitable example. In this case, you have to write a definition for each and every types of a Java variables and how to explain the types of Java variables using a example. You have to write the programs. Okay. So write some more examples on types of Java variables and execute every programs. You will get a clear idea about the differences between the types of Java variables. So let us execute this program. So I am saving this program. Test.java, because main method class name is Java. So save the program in the bin folder. After that, open the command prompt, cd backslash cd java cd jdk cd bin. Okay, now compile the program. Java C, file name .java. This is process of compilation. Okay. So put a parenthesis after M1, save the program, again compile the program after removing the errors. So now our program is successfully compiled. Once successfully program is compiled, next step is execute the program. See here, this is the output of the program. So let us see, let us trace the program. See here, initially we stored the value of a and b as a 400 and 500. So execution always starts from main method. These are two printing statements. So here we are accessing the values of a and b in a main method in a static area. It will print the value of a as 400 and b as a 500. Okay. So in the these two outputs are belonging to the method m1 t1.m1. In the print in the m1 body, I am writing a println method, and here I am again printing the values of static variable a and b using the class and period operator. Again, it will print the value of a as a 400 and value of b as a 500. So this is the output of this program. Okay. So this is how to write a program, how to write a Java programs. Okay. So in the next class, we will discuss the next concept like a Java statements. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Thank you.